joining today's Zoom meeting. Again, my name is Jason Wright. It's not my team. We're just a cohort of just team members from our office, and we all are experienced child support veterans in the work that we do here in the office. We come from a variety of different backgrounds throughout our department. And so I think with just the team that I have today to assist me, and because I don't know it all, but I know a lot, and I think from the different backgrounds that we come from, we can offer a whole lot of good quality information. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy doing this training, because we understand that child support has a huge impact on a lot of the fathers that we serve, just parents in general. And there's just a lot of misconceptions and just bad information that floats around. And so hopefully after today's training, we can dispel some of those myths, kind of explain exactly who we are, what we do, why we do what we do, how we do what we do. And just remember, this is a Child Support 101 training. This is not Child Support 201 or 301. If there's anything that there's always that one case where, I know something, those things, I'm not saying that they don't happen, and because they do, but anything case specific or that is a unique set of circumstances, that's something that we probably maybe want to spend some more time offline to get some of the background on. And so like Kevin mentioned before, Andrea will be managing the chat. You'll have the contact information for all of us. Well, I know for me and Cameo, and then for sure. And then we can do any necessary follow-up if need be. But I just want everyone to know that, what we talk about here, we want to keep in here. So this is kind of, even though it's an open Zoom meeting, but what we talk about in the chat, we kind of want to keep it in the chat. What we talk about on this Zoom meeting, we want to keep it kind of in the Zoom meeting. So we're not going to take any information and run back and try to look it up or anything like that. We want to be able to create an environment for some open dialogue, to communicate to the community and let the community communicate with us. And so I've been working for the department and our outreach department. I just made 19 years last month, or in April. So I worked in a variety of different departments, outreach, court support. So if you ever had to go to court, I was one of the people that you would see prior to going to the courtroom. I've worked in what we call enforcement, just manages a monthly or daily caseload. And so I've worked in a variety of different aspects. And so I just wanted some of my staff that I'm working with today to kind of introduce themselves and kind of explain a little bit what they've done. Cameo, you want to jump in?
Yes, sir. I can go right now. Can you guys hear me good?
Yep.
Okay, cool. My name is Neal Williams. I've actually been a part of Alameda County Department of Child Support Services going on 28 years. Been in a variety of departments, but most of the departments I've been in have been involving dealing with the public within the office, as well as being out in the community, dealing with a lot of faith-based organizations, community-based organizations. I'm able to offer a unique perspective, being that I have this experience. I've done outreach, and I've been on the side where a lot of fathers are as far as the challenges with child support, being that I'm a single dad. So I'm able to offer a lot of different perspectives, and that's what I hope to give you guys today.
And Jackie, you want to?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good morning. My name is Jackie Sanders, and I have been with Alameda County Department of Child Support for 8 years now. I started off in the call center for maybe about 8 months or so, and I have been on the special work assignment team, which handles mostly enforcement actions that occur on child support cases for the last 7+ years. We are now incorporating outreach. So that is a part of my team's responsibility as well. So I'm happy to be here, happy to be on the call. I did have the opportunity to visit, I believe, your office in Alameda once last year. and had the opportunity to do the first Fatherhood Summit as well last year, which was really, really great. I really enjoyed that. So again, I'm happy to be here. Happy Friday to everyone, and hopefully we can pass on some helpful information to you.
Okay. And I know
I'll go,
Andrea is,
Jason. I'll
okay.
go. My name's Andrea, and I've been here almost 19 years. I previously had a caseload in the enforcement unit. Now I'm assigned to the special work assignment team with Jackie, and my focus currently is on the compromise of arrears program, and we do have a slide that'll cover that.
All right. And so we've all pretty much worked in almost every department, I think, except accounts. So we've kind of done it all. And like Cameo, he was being kind of modest. Cameo was like one of the original outreach child support workers, just even in the Bay Area, because Alameda County was one of the first counties even doing outreach. Cameo has been to San Quentin, Santa Rita, high schools. He appeared on 106.1 KMEL numerous times doing child support Q&A. So he has a wealth of information and knowledge. So he is a guru when it comes to child support, especially in the outreach field. So with that being said, we're going to jump into this slide and go into this presentation. I'm motivated and caffeinated. So if I move a little too fast, somebody say, hey, slow down a little bit, let me know, and I'll slow down. But I want to really get through these slides and then open it up to the Q&A, because I know there's a lot of questions that are out there and that may still remain when I'm done. So a lot of times people want to know, what is child support? And so, and number one, people need to know what child support is. We're not CPS. We had nothing to do with the removal of children. All right. We're not Child Protective Services or Family Court Services. The Department of Child Support Services does the following. We obtain and enforce orders for paternity. We obtain and enforce orders for child support, and we obtain and enforce orders for medical support. And then we collect on back support, which is known as child support arrears. So those are our primary functions. That's what we do. We establish parentage, and then we'll talk about that in a later slide of how we do that by way of paternity, and then the different ways you can establish paternity, which is basically parentage. But we obtain and enforce child support orders. We obtain and enforce orders regarding health coverage for the minor children that are involved between two parents. All right. And so what we need to know is that, I have a saying that I've been saying since I started, is that child support is more than payment. I believe child support, are those things that we just mentioned, but also just having both parents involved. And I forgot who the presenter was. I forgot his name, and I hate that I forgot his name, Kevin. But he gave us some phenomenal data just about the involvement of just fathers or both parents being involved in the child's life. These are just a few of the things that have a positive impact when both children are being reared by both parents. The reduction of teen pregnancy, the interaction or the lack of interaction in the criminal justice system, the increased rates in high school graduation, the suicide rates decline if you have both parents actively involved. There are numerous positive impacts when both parents contribute both physically and financially into the lives of the children that they have. So one of the things—
Jason, it looks like your screen share is off.
Oh, okay.
Or Jackie, I'm sorry.
Let's see.
I don't see the slide.
I see it. Is that—
It's still there. I'm still sharing.
Okay. Can anybody in the chat just mention if there is— okay. Okay.
Can't
hear you, Kevin.
Okay.
I said I thought it was a website, but that's actually in your slide deck. I'm gonna go offline and step back into my role.
Okay. So, all right. So we're okay. So with child support, we're kind of going to jump into. There's two ways a case gets opened up in our office. All right. There's what we call a non-aided way. Is pretty much when a parent, whether it be mom or dad, can even be grandparent, whoever has custody of the minor children, want to request financial support or establish parentage for the minor children that they're raising. All right. And so they can fill out that application. Now it's done online. The process is a lot faster. And that's what you see right here. You sign up online, you get a username, a password, and it'll pretty much auto-populate all the information that we need, and a case can be opened. The other way is what we call for an aided case, or for when a minor child is active to cash aid through the social service system. Then the case is automatically sent over as a referral, whether one parent or either parent wants the case to be open or not. An automatic referral comes over to our office to open up a case to establish parentage and establish a support order based on his or her ability to pay support. And so those are the two ways a case can be opened. And so when a case is open, and Cameo, feel free to jump in on anything if I miss something. When a case is open, we do the following. We locate absent parents. So if there's a parent that wants to know, where dad is or where mom is, they can request our services, and we use our services to locate parents. Also, we establish paternity, and I'm going to talk about that in our next slide, kind of the ways we establish paternity. And I mentioned before, we establish support and medical orders. Sometimes people have already gone to court and they have a child support order, and they've been trying to work it out without the court or our department's involvement. But for whatever reason, they need us to be involved to help enforce the order. It could be dad saying, or mom, whoever's ordered to pay support, to say, hey, you know what? 1 minute she's threatening to put child support on me. 1 minute he or she is not threatening to put child support on me. Or there's a miscommunication on how the payment should come in, whether it should be all given at the beginning of the month, the middle of the month. Then we do the enforcement. We take care of the accounting. We make sure that there's a accurate account of all payments made or any payments that have been missed. So we do the accounting. And I'm going to just talk about that too, because sometimes people say, why would somebody want to just voluntarily open up a case? When it comes to the accounting, I'll just give an example of a case I worked last week. They were trying to work it out, but due to the amount that this person had to pay each month, there was a miscommunication on what was paid and what was not paid. So when the case got opened up, it got opened up with a $99,000 balance. So I had to sift through the accounting once the paying parent provided me all of their payments, and then the other parent kind of went over, and then we kind of had to figure it all out. But can you imagine being at home and all of a sudden you're saying you paid or you missed a few payments, but not that many, but there's he said, she said, and all of a sudden getting a bill with $99,000 on it. And so the accounting alone makes it, a big reason why you have a lot of non-custodial parents or paying parents that will initiate the case to be open, because they don't want to be dictated or that hovering over them a lot of times. And it's just easier for us to keep the accounting. Also, on cases that already have established child support orders, we modify support orders. As we know, with today's time, with the COVID-19, the shelter in place, you may have an order where, so I always say, hey, you played for the Raiders last year, but this year, now you're working at, Walmart or UPS. Your financial circumstances have changed. You're unable to pay. You're unable to work. You have no ability to pay. So we need to modify those orders. And so we offer those services, and because right now that is a huge thing right now, the modification of child support, because people's circumstances have definitely changed, and we are getting inundated with modification requests. I know my caseload alone, I know the courts have been closed, but they are filtering some people in with modification requests. So that's one of the biggest things we are able to do, because not everybody knows how to navigate through that paperwork. And when it comes to doing that, sometimes that alone can turn people off a lot of times. And I'll just speak for fathers in general. and Cameo, if you could just jump in. I know we dealt with this before. Going into those courtrooms or to that courthouse, it can be intimidating for some of the fathers that go in there and they just walk away from the process, but they have every legal right to ask for a change because their circumstances have changed.
Not only have the circumstances have changed, but you have to also be as unemotional as you can to convey the circumstances that have changed, because going into court can be daunting. So that's something that you definitely want to share with the fathers, that you're not going in there yelling a bunch of miscellaneous things. You want to be very efficient in how you do it, but you have a right to do it.
And Jackie, did you? Okay. Okay. All right. So modification, and we'll talk about that towards the latter part too. All right. Now I mentioned about paternity. And so paternity is the establishment of, parentage pretty much. There's different ways to establish paternity. We have, the way we do it through our office. We can do it through acknowledgement. We can serve a legal action, and then we serve the party with paperwork, and where we name them as a parent, and they have, a time frame when they can respond to the paperwork and either accept it or dispute it. And then we can conduct a genetic test through our office free of charge. We also have, which a lot of parents do in the hospital. A lot of times people talk about the birth certificate, but the most important form, as far as paternity is involved, is what's called a POPS form, a declaration of paternity form, which is signed in the hospital, usually by a case manager or a social worker in the hospital. Once the child is born, they'll come into the room and ask for you to sign paperwork. I know when my oldest son was born in like 97, they kind of just came in, dropped the paperwork off, came back, did you sign it, and then left. I think they've gotten better with that now, but that form is very, very important. It establishes parentage, which allows a parent, if they need to in the future, to file for custody or share custody or visitation, or for a child support to even be established, you have to establish parentage. So that form has a huge impact on not only both parents, but also the child. If a parent was to pass away, it can help expedite access to survivor benefits through Social Security. So that establishment of paternity is huge. Also, the marital presumption. If a child is conceived or born during the course of a marriage, there is a legal presumption under the law that that child is legally their child. And so that whole part right there could be a training in itself, but we're not going to use much time to go into that today, but that's just a whole topic in itself, and I'll just kind of leave it out there. Camille, did you want to say anything else about the?
No, I thought, but you tapped in it. It's a whole different topic.
Yeah, just hypothetically, if a child is conceived in marriage, but biologically you find out later the child is or isn't yours biologically, do you still have a legal responsibility or a legal obligation? So that can be interesting. Okay. All right. Next slide. So a lot of times people are wondering, when they come up with child support, what is used in the calculation? You often hear about, well, they can put me on child support. I got my whole shoebox. I got a shoebox full of my receipts. That's great that you have those receipts in case you have to take anything back to the store. But, when it comes to child support, there's really 5 to maybe 7 primary factors. Now, there's other things that are used, but I'm going to kind of harp on, since it's just a child support 101 training, 5 to maybe 7 factors that are used. And that's pretty much it. And so it's the income of both parents have the biggest impact, like how much money dad makes, how much money mom makes, or we have cases how much dad makes and dad makes, or mom makes and mom makes, or a child could be with grandma. So there may be a support order against both biological parents. So, but it's the income of the parents. The second biggest impact in the child support calculation is the amount of visitation or timeshare. So if there's shared timeshare, that has a huge impact on support. So meaning if you have 50-50 timeshare, 1 week on, 1 week off, or a pretty equitable amount of time, your support is going to be a little more equitable and maybe lower. If you have 0% timeshare, and the threshold of child support kind of changes, and the support threshold is going to be a little bit higher for the paying parent. So visitation does impact the amount of support. Then if you have any other support orders, any other minor children that you provide for that live in your home, or any other court order support obligations for minor biological children, if you have daycare expenses or health insurance premiums or mandatory deductions out of your pay for things such as union dues or retirement. And that's pretty much it. Those are the primary factors. Now, there are other things, and again, I'm not going to dig too deep into those, but your filing status, if you file married filing jointly, married filing separately, file single, filing head of household, if you have property, if you claim your property tax or mortgage interest, all those things have a different impact tax-wise, and that gives you different disposable income. So when we average out the income, it has a factor on how much income is being used in the calculation of support. But these are the primary factors that kind of really shift the amount of support that's going to be paid by a parent. Income, visitation, timeshare, and mandatory deductions, and any other biological kids. All right. And Ken, did you want to say anything before you move on? Okay.
Actually, I did want to just make sure, so that does not include, obviously rent is a factor, but people will talk to us about, their car note and their regular bills and things like that. Is it innately factored in? Yes. However, primarily it's not really factored in, like that. So I want to make sure I tapped into that, because I'm sure when we get to the Q&A, it's going to come up.
And the one thing about the calculation of support that we're leaving out, that's a huge factor, is the court. So we use these things in the calculation of support. However, when you walk into the courtroom, the judge or the court commissioner or judicial officer has the final say-so on which you may or may not pay. So when you get into court, if you have those other things like rent, or different things you fill out on your income and expense declaration that shows your income and your expenses, although they aren't used in the calculation of support, the court may or may not, consider those factors in maybe deviating from the support amount, or they call rebutting the guideline amount. The court can look at certain necessary basic expenses and then take those into consideration, depending on your income level. A lot of times, like the income after your support deductions fall under the federal poverty guideline, there may be some deviation from the amount. There's different factors that the court can consider, when it comes to your expenses. But as far as the calculation of the support, it's primarily these factors. Okay. So a lot of times, child support, it can have a negative, connotation to it. Child support, they took all my money. Child support, did this, child support did that. And I'm not saying those things didn't happen, but a lot of times when people talk about stuff, they don't always provide the overall clear picture of what happened. Like when it comes to support orders, when we serve a wage assignment, it says clearly in the wage assignment not to exceed more than 50% of the net threshold of the paying person. So when you hear about a check, my whole check was gone, that should never really happen. If you get a check for $1, at the minimum, you should receive 50 cents. So your whole check shouldn't be garnished. And so that's something that we want people to, hey, if that happened with your payroll, we need to correct that ASAP. You need to contact us so we can resolve that issue with your payroll and make sure it doesn't happen again. And if we're taking up to 50% of somebody's net pay, it probably needs a modification. We don't want to make it impossible for somebody to survive. And a lot of times, we don't always know that there's been a change in circumstances. And it really is up to the parties to advocate for themselves, to let us know, hey, my situation has changed. I need this amount to change because I'm getting hit with these enforcement actions. My medical support that the court has ordered me to pay is now too expensive. I have a new job. Instead of my medical being only $100 a month for me and my family, now it's $600 a month, or it's at an unreasonable amount. So we need to know these things, but we have to enforce them if it's court ordered. But also if it's court ordered and there's been a change, there is something that we can do about it. But the credit reporting, that's a mandatory enforcement action. It has to be reported. That's a mandate. We don't have any threshold over that. But the credit reporting is done through the 3 major credit bureaus. If you feel that is incorrect, you have every right to dispute it like you would any other creditor. And Jackie, do you mind stepping in? Because I know you and Andrea for years, kind of dealt with the enforcement actions with your team. Do you mind talking a little bit about the enforcement actions?
Sure. So on our team, our special work assignment team, we do deal with a few of the enforcement actions. We no longer handle licensing, but we used to. So typically the enforcement actions, if you are basically doing, I'm saying this kind of loosely, but doing what you're supposed to according to your court order. Some of these enforcement actions, you won't even know, you won't even see those things happening. So a lot of the enforcement actions take place when you're not in compliance with what that court order states. So if it states you need to pay $100 a month and you're only paying $50 a month, well, now you're in jeopardy of possibly having your license suspended. License meaning driver's license, barber's license, firearm license, security license, all because the court order is not being followed. So it's really important, like Jason stated earlier, if your circumstances have changed, I know right now with COVID-19, you definitely should get in contact with us, let us know, because a modification may be appropriate. Or there may be other options that we can look into on your case so that these enforcement actions don't take place. There are ways for us to stop some of the enforcement actions if deemed appropriate. So we were handling license. We also handle disability, the state tax lottery, bank levies, and passport denials are pretty much what our team handles. The passport denial, once your arrears balance exceeds $2,500, so again, your arrears is your past due balance. So if you weren't paying that $100 a month, once it reached $2,501, your past due balance, then you're automatically submitted for passport denial. In order to get that passport released, you would definitely have to come through our office and you would have to pay that arrears balance back down to 0 before we would release the passport. So that's one of the enforcement actions. Sometimes the state might be willing to give you a temporary release of the passport if deemed appropriate, again, for possibly imminent death in the family or traveling for work, but again, it's only temporary. The other main thing that we handle pretty consistently, but it's stopped now due to COVID-19, are bank levies. Bank levies are generated every 3 to 4 months whenever your arrears or past due balance exceeds $100. All it takes is for you to be past due $100 or more, and every 3 to 4 months, a bank levy can go out to multiple banks. So if you have an account at Wells Fargo, one at Bank of America, one at the credit union, each one of those can be levied 3 to 4 times per month, depending again on what your arrears balance is. So the enforcement actions are in place. There are times where, I mean, the main thing I would recommend, honestly, is calling in. So if you see a bank levy's taking place, or you've noticed your license has been submitted for suspension, or your passport's been denied, call us and talk to us and let us look at your case on an individual basis so that we can try and help. Because the longer you wait to reach out to us, sometimes there's things out of our control. For example, the banks only hold your funds for 10 days once they receive our levy. So if you wait till the 20th day to reach out to us, once we've already received your funds, it's really hard for us to give them back to you because they've either gone to the state to repay money back from when the other party on your case may have received aid, or they've gone out to the other parent or party on the case. And we can't say, hey, wait, Mrs. or Mr. So-and-so, can you give me that bank levy money back because the other person really needs the money, they're going through a hardship. So it's best to reach out to us as soon as you can once you see any of these enforcement actions have really impacted you.
Yes, Jackie, and you said something that was key, and I meant to kind of state it in the previous slide, and I'm glad you kind of went in, because this is the thing that kind of gives the office, when people talk negatively about the office, you know, it's probably because of one of these things that have happened. But the one thing like about the license, before the license is suspended, you get a notice 120 days prior to it being suspended. So, and I know our office, a lot of the local child support agencies have kind of had a big shift in the way we deal with the clients. We understand, especially in today's time, is to respond. Contact, if you initiate the contact, I'm not saying everything is going to be, you know, just beautiful and roses, but there's a lot of things that we are able to do if you respond and let us and work with us. We are very reasonable. I know, especially in our office, I'll even speak. Contra Costa, San Francisco, Santa Clara, specifically, we work with a lot of the same cases, a lot of the same case makeup. The key is just getting people to respond, because people are so fearful of what they think is going to happen, and they'll be surprised at what we are able to do by just having some type of communication with the office or with your caseworker or someone in the office. One of the big things right now is the state unemployment. Like, there's some things that we can, that we have some discretion with. And so we try to be as liberal as we can with that discretion. There's some things we have no discretion with, you know, like Jackie mentioned about the passport denial. If the state or the Fed say, hey, we're not going to release this passport until your balance is at zero, we don't have any say-so over that. When they decided to do these, I'm gonna go ahead and just talk about it a little bit, these stimulus checks.
Right.
You know, I would say 99.99% of people that work at the local child support level weren't really in favor of that, you know, all the ones that I've talked to. But that came from that came from Congress. We had no say-so, you know. So, you know, a lot of us may agree with a lot of the sentiment, but also if there's a legal process and a legal action has to be taken, then our hands are somewhat tied. So it's not so much that we don't want to. Some things we can do, some things we can't do. But
Hey, Jay, can I jump in there really quick? One of the things when Jason's saying it's important to respond, that's one part of it, but it's important to respond early. The earlier that you can respond, the better. A lot of these things are time sensitive, right? And you some of the fathers create a hardship for themselves contacting us late in the game. Like, if you have 120 days to respond to your license, you contact us on day 120, then your license is going to be suspended. It's going to cost you more time, cost you more money. And even though we can work with you, whether it's the license or the levy, the things that Jason mentioned that we can control, it's in your best interest to do it earlier than to wait. Waiting is not going to help you. You know, the early responding and communicating with us will help you more than hurt.
thank you. So, you know, I mentioned about the modifications in the previous slide, and I'm not going to spend too much time, but this is the biggest thing, especially right now. If there is a change in financial circumstances, timeshare circumstances, the birth of a new child, anything that is going to change the way or change your ability to either pay support or receive support, you have a right to ask for a modification. And you can do it two ways. One, you can do it through our office. We do all the paperwork. You know, if a court date is needed, then we establish a court date, or we can facilitate a stipulation, which is the written legal agreement of both parents. But, you know, we can do all of that. Or if our process of doing a modification is not as fast as you would like it to be, or you just don't want to go through the local child support office, you don't have to. You can always file your own motion directly with the courts and request a court date for a modification of child support. And those are free. You know, if there's an open child support case, there's no legal fees when you go to file for any type of legal action as it relates to child support. So I really, it kind of disheartens me sometimes when I hear people say, man, I've been paying this amount and it should have been, and it's like, dude, ask for a modification or go down there and file. Or if you say you're going to file, you have to follow through, because if you don't, nothing changes the existing court order other than a new court order. So in no court order, especially in California, it's just set in stone. Even though we set this order, let's say in 2018, we're in 2020 and a whole new set of scenario. I mean, a whole new set of circumstances in a different scenario. You know, things have changed. You have to you got to kind of advocate for yourself and make that request through the office or make that request through the court. And you have to get a new court order, because what's going to happen is that if you don't do anything about it, that money is just ticking. And it's being added to a child support arrears balance. And once you get past due, you get hit with those different enforcement actions. And then there's nothing that usually that we can do regarding the arrears, except when we get to a screen coming up. And I think Jackie's going to talk a little bit about that when we get to, or Andrea, about the compromise of arrears program. But with the COVID-19 and the shelter in place, I think Jackie mentioned it, there's been a stay kind of on bank levies and license suspensions. So there's been a suppression statewide. So if you weren't submitted, you know, I think it was by March 26th or 27th, then you haven't been submitted after that. And we're not doing any submissions. And Jackie, let me know if I'm right with those dates, but somewhere right around there.
It's around that time frame, maybe shortly, right before, somewhere in that area. But yeah, that's pretty right on.
And the license is a big thing. It's probably one of the number one reasons that gets, you know, someone to contact our office in regards to an enforcement action. It's the license. It's like, hey, I'm a security guard. I need my guard card. Hey, you know, I need my license to get to and from work. I need my license to pick up my kids. I need my license to go look for work. I need my license to apply for a job. They require a valid driver's license. So we don't want to hinder you from employment. So that's one of the things people think, well, I haven't paid in months and they're not going to give me nothing. No, let us know what's going on. Let us know, hey, these are the applications I've submitted. You know, this is the job I'm trying to apply for. This is one of the qualifications. I got a good chance of getting this job. Can I get a release? If I make a small good faith payment, maybe you can get a release. There's a lot of different things that we can do to try to work with you. You may not even need to make a payment. I mean, I'm not gonna say that's gonna happen in every case, but there's a good chance that could happen. You never know. But the license suppressions have been done statewide. Now, I don't know when that's gonna be lifted. It could be June, it could be July, it could be August, it could be next week. But for right now, all of those things have been suppressed. Our office has been closed, you know, due to the shelter in place, but we do have a drop box in front of our office. We're still, you know, working the same business hours. I think 95% of the office is telecommuting. You know, I'm working from home. Jackie's working from home. Cameo's working from home. Andrea's the lucky one that gets to work in the office with nobody in there. But we are still open for business. And so we're here to serve any participants that have child support issues, you know, that need modifications, that need the establishment of parentage. We are open. And so we're trying to really think outside the box, work outside the box. You know, we can do anything by email or by fax. You know, we're doing it. So we are still open and business as usual. Let's go to the next slide. So I mentioned about the Compromise of Arrears program, and I was hoping Andrea and Jackie could talk a little bit about this program because they kind of specialize in this program. And it's probably one of the biggest things that can really help a lot of people that have a huge arrearages. And because that's one of the things that I think people get buried with so much of arrears and back support. It's like once you get so deep and it's like, I don't see any way out, and they just evade our office rather than working with us. And so this program, I think, helps create at least some type of dialogue with parents that are in that predicament. Jackie?
So the Compromise of Arrears program is set up through the state, and the program is set up for any participant that owes child support monies back to the state from when the other party or participant on their case received some sort of child welfare or cash aid. So typically on a child support case, there's two. If you owe arrears or past due balance, there's two type of balances that may be owed. Again, one to the state from when one party was receiving cash aid, and then there may be another balance that may be owed to the other parent. So this is specifically for balances that are owed back to the state to help recoup some of the monies from when the other party on your case was receiving cash aid or welfare. So with this program, Andrea's been processing a lot of the applications since she is in the office, and we have received an increase in requests for these applications because this program is set up, and it's a really good program if you qualify. I highly encourage you, if you're not sure to whom your arrears or past due balance is owed, to reach out to us. Again, don't wait. Reach out to us so that we can look at your case. And if those balances are owed to the state and you are facing a financial hardship, you may qualify under the Compromise of Arrears program. And what we would do is get an application sent out to you, fill out the application along with any corresponding documents. So just like you're doing a modification, we would ask you if you're paying rent, to whom are you paying rent to, and how much are you paying? So we just need the documents that correspond with that. So if you say you pay $2,000 a month for rent, we need proof as far as either a rental receipt or a rental agreement, or even a note from someone or a letter stating Mr. So-and-so pays $2,000 a month for rent. If you pay PG&E, if you pay water, any utility bills, please provide us with a copy of that documentation along with your application. And Andrea's in the office. She gets access to all the mail that's coming in. And she's been pretty diligent working on those applications every day. We know time is of the essence, and we know currently going through COVID-19, a lot of participants' financial status has changed. So we are here to help if those balances are owed to the state. Let's give an example. If you owe, I don't know, $10,000 back to the state in arrears. What the program will do is that Andrea goes through, she enters all your information into the state program, and the program may say, and don't quote me here, but it may say out of the $10,000 that you currently owe, if you pay us back $1,000 either in a lump sum or over a 36-month period, we'd be willing to forgive the remaining $9,000 that you currently owe in arrears. And again, it's based upon whatever your hardship is, and the state system actually dictates or advises us whether or not you qualify and how much you would be required to repay if you do qualify. Every county throughout the state of California offers the Compromise of Arrears program. So it's not just an Alameda County program, it's throughout the state. So if you have a case in Solano County, a case in Alameda County, Cocoa County, Contra Costa County, all of the counties offer the Compromise of Arrears program. So it's definitely a benefit. There are some restrictions if, for example, you've had an application or a COPE that has actually been denied, then there is a period of time that you have to wait to reapply. There are some things also possibly in the works. We haven't gotten an official okay or not in regards to COVID-19 and They're trying to make some adjustments so that we're a little bit more flexible with you possibly having multiple cases and qualifying for the program. But again, we haven't received the final word on that yet. So again, I would encourage you to apply. Typically, we work those applications in the order that they're received. So the sooner you fill the application back and get it back to us, then we get you in line to get the application processed. We're pretty up to date on those. So again, I encourage you to get them in as soon as possible. And again, if you're not sure whether or not you qualify, give us a call, and then we can take a look at your case and follow up with you.
Thank you, Jackie. The one thing too, and I've heard it, and I know Cameo, we've heard it like doing outreach at so many different places in the past. People always say, I bet you if the money was owed to y'all would make sure I get. Actually, when the money is owed to the state, we have a lot more flexibility, and you'd be surprised as forgiving as the state would be with a lot of these cases that we work when it comes to the compromise of arrears program. It's on the non-aided cases. The law limits us on what we can and cannot just waive and forgive. But when the money is owed to us because of an aided case, we have a huge amount of more threshold and ability to be creative on if those arrears get compromised or not. So thank you for sharing that, Jackie.
No worries. Did I forget anything, Andrea?
She's working that chat. I saw that chat blowing up.
Okay.
Let her go.
Okay.
I think
that chat off the chain.
Okay.
And so the one thing I did see in the chat briefly was about the modification is that, especially with the COVID-19, the courts have done a shelter in place. But if you filed your request with the court, or we filed a request through our office, let's say we filed for our court date in March, and the court date was scheduled for April. But now, due to the shelter in place, we won't be able to get into court until June or July because the courts have slowed down the amount of court dates. Your modification of support backdates to the date of your legal filing. So just wanted to kind of put that out there. Even though we may not get into court until July or the latter part of June, the effective date can go back to the date of your filing. So
Okay.
Just wanted to.
Kevin had asked that, and I wasn't sure if that had changed, so I just let him know that typically it's the new support amount is in the month that it's heard. So
Yeah, so it can go back to that date, and then so the court can reserve to go back to that effective date of the filing of the legal action. Just wanted to put that out there. And so I know I just happened to tap into that chat, and I see Andrea's just working away. Thank you, Andrea. So I know there's going to be some questions. So I just wanted to go through just one more slide and then open it up to questions to the room. Just some things that we don't do, just so people know, because sometimes some of the frustration comes when people want to resolve an issue, but you're in the wrong spot. You know, don't come in to McDonald's talking about where's my fried chicken. Don't come in to Taco Bell talking about where's my Chinese food. You know, I mean, it's the wrong place. You're in the wrong spot. We don't do that. I can direct you on where to go, but we don't handle divorces. We don't handle custody and visitation, although custody and visitation does impact the way support is calculated. But as far as custody and visitation orders, those are done separately. Restraining orders, we don't deal with restraining orders, although some restraining orders can have a child support component where they can issue a temporary amount of support in a restraining order, but we don't handle restraining orders in our office. We don't establish spousal support orders. However, if there's a spousal support order component in a child support order or family support order, we will enforce that spousal support order as long as child support is also ordered. So just as a brief example, if you have an order from a divorced married couple and the parent was ordered to pay $500 in child support, $500 in spousal. And I'm just using these numbers because they're easy to add. Once the child emancipates, which means turns 18 and graduate, or 19, whichever happens first, once the child support ends, then we'll close out the spousal support enforcement as well. So, so that kind of concludes the PowerPoint presentation. And again, I want to apologize. You know, if we were in the office or back in Alameda, we probably would have maybe went a little more detail in some areas than others, but due to time constraints, we were able to get through the slide, and I really want to open it up to some questions because I know this topic is always loaded with questions. And so with that being said, I don't know, Kevin, do you want to facilitate the questions, or how we can kind of figure out how we want to go through the questions?
I think Andrea got through most of the questions from the chat. If anyone has any questions, I think the best way to do it would be post them in the chat, and then either Andrea, Jason, Jackie, or Cameo can respond to them, whoever makes the most sense.
Yeah, so maybe Andrea, if there's some that haven't been addressed, then maybe if you don't get to them, you can read them out, and then one of us can go ahead and address them that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about the slides being available and if the session is being recorded. So I believe it is being recorded, correct?
Yes, it's definitely being recorded, and the slides will be emailed out by next Friday.
Okay.
Maybe a little sooner, but definitely by next Friday.
Okay.
Thank you.
And also the one thing I just want to just really kind of put out there is, and Jackie mentioned it, and I think in Cameo backed her up, was that the key is to respond to the paperwork. Please, 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 when you get paperwork in the mail, just because you act like you didn't receive it doesn't mean like it's going to stop the legal process. It's one of the few agencies where it can move forward with or without your participation, you know? So it always works best if you participate in the process. And so by failing to respond, like Cameo said, especially responding early, you limit yourself with the flexibility of which way the case may go. You know, if we send you paperwork, you never let us know till after we get the order that, no, I actually share 50-50 timeshare with my kids. The support amount would have been probably a lot different. Now, when we got to play catch up, there's a whole nother legal process we got to do to get back to the space that we probably maybe should have started from if we would have had your participation. And so there's a lot of reasons why people don't participate. So I'm not holding anybody, like blaming anybody, but it just to put it out there. If you can take anything away from this, it's to respond and don't be afraid to communicate with the office. And I know it sounds kind of maybe weird for some people, but I'm gonna be quite honest. There's a lot of misconceptions about the work that we do and the services that we want to provide. And none of us get any type of pleasure in seeing somebody paying an unfair or unreasonable amount of support. But we can't help that individual if they don't respond or don't participate in the process or don't even let us know what's going on. And you'd be surprised, you know, how many times we're sitting around each other, we talk about a case, people say, wow, I didn't know. It was that easy? Oh, yeah, it was that easy. You know, it's just being...
and Jace, can you just touch on really quickly, because I know we get the negative feedback almost like we're the IRS, but can you can you just let them know who we actually work for? Let them know who we work for. We don't work for either parent, right?
Yeah.
We're not biased.
Yeah, and I know sometimes people think, you know, family law, and I'm gonna just put it out there, it's not always the most father friendly. It's probably one of the few environments where men feel really vulnerable, because I just think there's a lot of reasons, because it's all the different elements that it taps into: your finances, your emotions, the ability to be or able to support or your children. So I get all that from being a parent. I've gone through it. Cameo has gone through it. We all, you know, understand that component, but we don't work for mom. We don't work for dad. We are an impartial entity running support based on the state guideline calculator, and that's it. And if anybody feels that they are unfairly treated, there's a process that you can go through. But if you ever feel that way, I would encourage you to explore your options as far as having those issues addressed. But we don't represent mom, so we're not her personal legal assistant. We're not dad's personal legal assistant to help him get around or evade his support obligations. We understand that some people aren't deadbeat. We don't even use that word. That's something that they created back in the 80s, you know. And I think in answering the deadbeat and just say, no, we don't even use that term. I've never heard anybody in our office use that term, and I've been in 19 years. I'm not just saying that. We understand some people are dead broke. There's a difference.
Difference.
Somebody being unable to pay or somebody being unwilling to pay. Do we have parents that are just unwilling to pay? They just have an issue. They don't want to pay that other parent. We got that dynamic. I'm not going to deny that. But we also have a huge population of people that just are unable to pay, and they can't afford to pay what they're currently ordered to pay, and they need assistance. So the same way we jump through a hoop and we'll do everything we can for that parent that needs support, because it costs money to raise these kids. It costs money to feed these kids. It costs money to get them signed up for football, basketball, cheerleading, band, gymnastics, etc., tutoring. Also, we understand that there's people that are going through some severe, dire times right now and can't afford to pay the support they were ordered to pay, and they need our assistance. And we are going to run through the same hoops for those people as well. So,
Hey,
Jason,
Jason.
Go ahead.
There's a question on the chat from Claudia in regards to if a participant doesn't have a social security number and is working for cash. I'm not sure if the process is still to presume income. So if you can answer that question.
that's always kind of a tricky one. Working under the table, being paid cash, we would have to probably look at the history of the case, look at if there's ever been any reported earnings, if there's been anything to help support that this person has the ability, or what supports that he doesn't, that he has the inability. It's kind of a case by case thing. On some cases, we do impute earnings, or I'm sorry, Andre. When it comes to the earnings, we can't possibly impute, earnings or minimum wage, or
Jason, let them know what impute means, because maybe they're not aware.
So if we determine, we look through, we can see this person is not active to permanent disability or SSI. They are not active to GA or active to CalWorks themselves with other children, or they're not incarcerated. We verify they're not in custody. So there's nothing showing that they have an inability to pay. Then there's some threshold where we can, look at previous work history or previous earnings and impute a certain amount of income that we feel is reasonable for that individual to pay. It could be state minimum wage. It could be previous earnings. Let's say if they had a really good job and they had earnings for the last 10 months, but now all of a sudden when we go to court a month later, I don't have any earning. I don't work anymore. Then, why is that? So that's kind of how that would work.
Jason, I got a question. A lot of fathers we work with, sometimes they feel like they have their child 50% of the time or 25% of the time or whatever, but they feel like they're paying as though they don't ever see their child. What's the best way for fathers to document that they are actually spending time? Because I know you said the calculation is based on, that's part of the calculation. Because that happens a lot where fathers feel like they have their kid a lot of the time, but they're still paying as though they're not. What's the best way? What's your advice to those dads?
Well, I'll say that sometimes, doing a kind of a reality check. So sometimes, like I've heard many times, just doing outreach and doing these calculations in court or doing them at my desk, people will say, I have my kids half the time. But then when you break down the actual time that they say that they have the child, it's more like 14%. It's like every other weekend, or it's 3 days every other week. To really get a clear, explanation of what the time share is, you kind of want to just have a calendar, just a regular calendar, and write on there, how much time the child is actually with you and with the other parent. And sometimes it could be 50%. Sometimes it could be that the paying parent has a child more than the parent that's receiving support. Those are cases where you need a modification. But we take that amount of time share, and there's a numeric percentage that we use that it comes out to, and then we just plug that into the calculation. And that's the way it's supported. So I would recommend that the person get a calendar and actually document the amount of time. And then in that amount of time, we can actually break it down to a timeshare percentage. And we plug that into the case and we can calculate the amount based on that timeshare percentage.
And you can check the website too, because the website, I think, still has the calculator on there, right, Jace?
Yeah,
where they can
you can
plug in their own time and see what the system comes up with. So if you have your child Monday, you pick them up from school, or, you know, on the weekends, and so many hours a day, you can actually plug that into the website online and it'll tell you how much timeshare or what the percentage is as well.
Yeah, and this is one of those misconceptions too. Like sometimes, and I'm gonna just put this out there too, and this is something that's, this is just the state of California. You know, when it comes to the child support calculation, you can have 50-50 timeshare and still be ordered to pay. So I want to put that out there as well, because that's the way the guideline has worked. It works when you plug in the income, but if the amount of income grossly outweighs the other parent, then you could be ordered to still pay support to the other parent. So whether it be mom or dad, if mom makes more money than dad and it's 50-50, then mom's going to pay dad. If dad is 50-50 and dad makes more than mom, then he could possibly pay the other parent. Mm-hmm. So usually though, a lot of times on those cases, if you had that type of relationship and interaction, you both kind of know what the child needs. We try to get those to kind of maybe stipulate to some type of agreement to maybe to 0-0. But if the income is grossly higher than the other, then you still could be ordered to pay even with a 50-50 timeshare. So that can be a little tricky, but don't think just because it's 50-50 timeshare, the support obligation stops. It's based on the timeshare and income.
Okay. Looks like we got a question from Jeanne. What about a parent who believes the other parent is trying to keep them from visiting their child to maximize the ratio of child support payable? I realize this is a family law matter, but what can they do if they can't afford an attorney/legal representation?
Well, number one, just remember that the courts only obtain, especially our office, obtain orders for child support and health insurance. We don't obtain orders for character and emotions. So we will never be able to dictate someone's, emotions or what they are, from that aspect. But as far as if there's been a history of visitation and shared timeshare, and then all of a sudden now you're going through this legal process and now it's starting to decrease, those are things that you want to make sure that you're present, you've responded, articulated that with your caseworker when they're doing the modification. And also if you have to go to court, present that as well and have your calendar showing, look, this is what the dates were. I had the child consistently for this time, these dates, pretty consistently. Now that we've gone through this legal process, because they know this, the visitation or timeshare can alter the amount of support being paid, this is what it's decreased to. Then the court can make a determination if it's, if it's reasonable to use the previous timeshare or, or figure it all out. That's something for the court to decide. Usually a lot of times it's still gonna be a he said, she said. Sometimes, dad may say I had a child 50%, mom may say 0. We may go just to move it along, use 25% right down the middle just to get it in the court and kind of try to hash it all out and figure it all out. Who has the most supporting evidence? Who has the most reasonable explanation of what the visitation currently is or what it currently was? If you live in Stockton and the child lives in Albany or Berkeley, are you really doing 50-50? Are you coming out every morning taking the kid? Some things don't sound right, you know what I mean? But sometimes, there can be a set of circumstances that we just can't figure out. So we try to find a middle ground and then go forward. But if they are doing that, I would encourage you to keep a calendar, log the dates, and then log when they have stopped and the reason why. So when you go to court or when the child support is calculated, you can express that and that can be considered. Camille?
No, I had nothing to add, Jay.
Okay.
Yes, diligent record keeping is ideal.
And I mentioned about the shoebox and the receipts, that's one of the, I know we had kind of talked about doing like some barbershop forums and we've done outreach, Camille and I, all kind of different places. And it's good to keep receipts, but they don't change or impact the amount of support. So, I would encourage people to keep more of a record of the timeshare more so than receipts. Because that will probably have a bigger impact in the support calculation. And if you make any direct payments, to the other party, to make sure you receive accurate support at a later time or a later date, is to put child support in the memo portion. If you leave it blank, who's to know if that was just for maybe a cell phone or for a pair of Jordans that you promised you were going to get them for getting straight A's in school or for scoring 25 points in his AAU game. If it doesn't say what it was specifically for, we don't know, then it's more of a he said, she said, and then that's something that we don't always know which way to go. So if you make any direct payments, which if you have an open child support case, you shouldn't, they should be made through the office. But if you do make them, make sure you put something in that memo portion to protect yourself.
Okay. And we are winding down to our last couple questions. So Maria Perez asked, will you be able to share PDFs of brochures and contact info for us to share with parents who want to look into this, or is there a referral process? Sound like they're asking for your phone number, Jason.
No, it sounds like they want to know where to go to get resources.
Call you directly.
It sounds like they want to know where to go to get resources, and they can go to the ca.gov under the Department of Child Support Services, and the same brochures that we have, they come from the state. And if you go to the California State website under department, you click on there, Child Support Services is listed there, and it has a whole litany of different brochures.
And if clients that are calling you guys, or they have caseworkers already, if they don't feel like their needs are being met by their particular caseworker, can they request a new caseworker?
No.
They request a new caseworker. Obviously, we deal with the public a lot. So can they contact us and maybe ask a question here and there? Absolutely. And then we're still going to refer it, to the caseworker, or maybe we can answer their questions. What we don't want to do is try to make it seem like they have special access. Right. They call us all the time. So definitely we want to address their concerns, but we don't want to make a habit out of undermining their caseworkers either.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right. Jason, Andrea, Jackie, Cameo, thank you very much. Several comments have been made in the chat box about how helpful this was and how the information was very useful. We'll be sending out your slide deck to individuals next week who are on the call. Virve has posted the link to the survey for this workshop. Please complete the survey. We need your information as we continue to build this program, and we continue to do the best we can to support you in your work with families. Any final comments, thoughts from our presentation team?
No, just thank you for your time. Just remember, please respond, participate in the process. And that's the biggest thing. Respond, please participate in the process.
On early, respond early.
Respond.
Yes, that is the key. We don't know what we don't know.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you very much. Look at us ending on time. Like I said, please take a few moments to click the link and complete the survey. Virve is continuing to post it, so it's at the front of your chat. We use that information. Thank you to Jason, Andrea, Jackie, and Cameo. You guys are a wealth of knowledge, and we hope that you guys find, the participants find it useful and can continue to pass that information on. Respond. That's what I heard today for sure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You guys have a great weekend. Keep an eye out for information on this training, the slide deck, and also the end of year survey. The end of year survey will be sent out early next week. We need that information as we move into a new time. Our workshops moving forward, at least through the end of this calendar year, will likely all be webinar-based, Zoom-based workshops. I don't anticipate that we'll be coming together in Alameda before the end of this year. If that changes, I will definitely let you know, but be prepared to meet via Zoom for the next, when we start up in September and probably through the end of the year. Again, much appreciation to our child support staff. And I just want to point out, I didn't say this in the beginning, but Alameda County Child Support, Jason in particular, has been part of the Father's Corps from the beginning back in 2013. We have worked very closely with the director, Phyllis Nance, over at Child Support. We are a very progressive county as far as child support is concerned, and they are definitely doing what they can do to make this system more father-friendly, to be honest with you, because historically, child support systems across the country have not been that way. So shout out to Phyllis, Director Nance, for her continued support of this work, and of the Father's Corps. We appreciate you guys.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. A lot of good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Child support out.